Welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. I am here tonight, as always, with Mr. Stop Spamming. Welcome, sir.
Hello, good evening.
And tonight we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to take a look at a conversion story of sorts to Islam. And this involves Mr. Abdullah Andalusi. Now, he's not the most prominent of Dawah guys, but he's been around a long time. He often has media appearances and stuff like that. He's kind of been the rent a victim Muslim on many kind of media outlets for the past 10 years. You've seen him going back on the BBC and various other channels here in the UK. I found his conversion story from a year ago, although it's something that he's been telling for a decade or more. And I wanted to run through it for a couple of reasons. Number one, there's some really dodgy details, as far as I'm concerned, in this conversion story, which makes me doubt it. Number two, I just wanted to go over the actual logic and reasoning behind this so-called conversion because they're really, really terrible reasons. So there's a couple of things we want to go through. So yeah, that is basically what we're going to do tonight. And just to let people get to know this character if you haven't before come across him. So this is what we're going to do tonight. Stops. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say before we got started, or
I don't know. Well, there's one funny thing because what do you think happens to a person if they wear a T-shirt that says Allah and then underneath is lesbian? You know, I don't know if you remember Tan in Speaker's Corner when he said Allah is gay, like in Happy. This
yeah,
caused a
yeah,
bit of
yeah, yeah.
an uproar, and
Oh,
now there was a girl running around saying Allah is a lesbian. What do you think happens?
oh, didn't she get? Yeah, somebody I think pointed this story to me a week or so ago. She got arrested, didn't she? Isn't she on trial?
Yes, she got put into jail for what? For 30 months, like almost 3 years jail for wearing a T-shirt, plus $5,500 fine.
Where was it? It was somewhere in North Africa, I think, wasn't it?
Morocco, correct.
Was
Oh,
it Morocco?
just as you're spot on. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is kind of funny because people will sometimes point to countries like Morocco and Tunisia and
And
say,
Tunisia,
they're a bit.
exactly, as being quite liberal. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reality once you start challenging Islam with anything even remotely controversial is well, a 30-month jail cell, but
Well, the reason was that Islam felt insulted.
yeah, basically.
So there you go. So that's just to start it off. You know, it's just
Yeah.
the hell of it.
Anyways, all right, so we're going to crack on with this video, and there will be a couple of points where, well, there's going to be one point where I'm going to actually intervene or cut into it, a brief part of another video, and there is a reason for that, but I'll come to it as we go. So let's get an introduction to Mr. Al-Andalusi and see what he has to say about supposedly joining Islam.
Barakallahu feekum for inviting me on. Who's Abdullah Andalusi? Just another servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we all try to be. So I was born in London, raised in London, UK. My family background is I'm kind of part Portuguese and part North African. So I grew up in the Christian secular family background.
Yeah, I already think is a red flag when you know that his dad is from a Muslim majority country, because throughout this video he kind of claims that, oh yeah, I didn't really sort of know Islam, or I kind of knew it a bit or whatever, but I came and it's like as if he was just going out and researching Islam and really had no idea about it. And yet your father is from a Muslim majority country. I find it doubtful that you didn't know something about Islam. But anyways, it's a
What
first
is
flag.
Christian secular or secular Christian?
Well, this is another thing that doesn't really make sense because he goes on to talk about it. Basically, his mum's Catholic, um, but he mixes up a lot of different terms like secular, liberal, which is another red flag because I think this is again, it's this kind of, it's like the Daniel Hakikatu. Everyone who's not a Muslim is some degenerate liberal kind of whatever liberal is supposed to mean. And yeah, he's using the same kind of language, and as if like, oh yeah, when I grew up I was in a secular liberal household, even though my father was a Muslim and my mum was a Catholic. So
Yeah, exactly.
it's kind of, I mean, not that you can't be religious as well as secular, but again, red flags for me everywhere on this.
And I kind of became Muslim at 14 years old. At about 18 or 19 years old, I got more involved in public dawah. And eventually, I ended up getting involved in public debates and discussions, giving lectures at universities, and kind of doing videos and publishing articles and things like this.
You were 14 when you converted to Islam, as you said. Can you take us back to those times? What was the reason that you started researching at such a young age?
A simple answer would say curiosity. But also, it was just simply, I became aware of different religions. So I grew up in a kind of Christian background. So my mother was Catholic. The school I went to was Church of England. And they had mass and communion and all this stuff. I was taught Bible stories and like my fellow students were. But I asked the question after I became aware that there were different religions. I asked the question, how do I know that I'm following the right religion?
Yeah, when you became aware of other religions, like your father, I can't believe that he didn't know that his father was from a Muslim majority country. This just sounds made up to me.
If I was born in China, would I be an atheist or a Buddhist? Would I be a Hindu if I was born in somewhere in India? The accident of geography can't determine what the truth is.
Now, see, this is a good reason, but he's essentially using the argument that atheists use against the fact that, is it a big coincidence that if you grow up in a Muslim majority country, you're almost certainly going to be a Muslim and you're going to be a Christian in a Christian country, etc. So he recognizes that argument. But if somebody was to say that, like if he was to say, oh, well, Islam is the fastest growing religion, and look, all of the Middle East is pretty much Muslim at this point, or virtually all of it, and he wouldn't accept that argument at that point, would he? That it's a matter of the accident of your birth, but he'll deploy it here when he wants to say, basically have a go at the religion which he grew up with. So I just find it kind of a duplicitous way of argument when he would reject that if it was used against Islam.
And there's different ideas going around. Well, I need to investigate for myself. And also, if there is a hell and there is a day of judgment, I don't want to get punished by God for following the wrong religion or the wrong belief. That could have bad consequences. So I wanted to investigate. And it's about 10 years old. I decided to go to my local library.
Yeah, it's just worth noting there. He said he converted at 14, but apparently all these questions were running through his head when he was 10. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't often, or occasionally, should I say, very young people who are very smart and they're questioning, they're into politics and religion. But at 10 years old, that is something very rare. Like, for example, the only person I can think who was getting into those kind of deep questions would be somebody like Noam Chomsky. I don't know if you've heard of him, Stops. He's he's kind of like the sort of public intellectual kind of anarchist guy who criticizes US foreign policy and is into linguistics. And, not trying to get into his politics here, but the point is he is recognized as like a very, very basically genius level. And he was writing about politics by the age of 12. Now, does anyone watching this think that Abdullah Al-Andalusi is a genius and he was having those kinds of Chomsky-like thoughts when he was 10 years old? I find that very unlikely somehow. Anyways, let's play a bit more.
So I always liked going to library anyway. This is before the internet. This is when people used to go to libraries, if you remember those things. Yeah. And I used to read every book you can imagine, not just on current religions, but historical religions, historical philosophies. You name it, I researched it, from ancient Egyptian concepts of life after death to Tibetan Buddhism to even kind of Western New Age spirituality. And
remember, everyone, he started doing this when he was 10 years old.
No,
Does someone really fucking believe this crap? 10 years old, he's at library. Most kids are out playing football on their bikes or whatever. He's in there reading about Tibetan Buddhism and ancient Egypt at 10 years old. Like fuck you were.
Now, remember, this guy, I mean, I've bumped into him many times, okay? And I'd be surprised if he can tell the time by looking at his watch. And this guy is I mean, come on. I mean, any kind of question you ask him, he is immediately lost. If you watch what he says, I mean, he's been I forgot the name of the program actually, because there used to be something about questions.
The big questions.
Yeah, and he made such a fool of himself there, because he is really his mental capacity is not that extravagant. Let me put it that way. And no, come on. I cannot believe that he was doing much reading, let alone in a library, let alone the stuff that he's talking about now. I can't believe that even at his age now, he will understand what it says.
Yeah, and I mean, Duda's just put in a chat. To be fair, I was into English history when I was 10, knew all the names of the kings. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying. I mean, obviously, you are taught stuff. You've already been at school for many years at that point. So I'm not saying that you're not learning about the world, but going into deep kind of philosophy and
Buddhist spirituality. Come on.
Yeah, I just like you that isn't something that's age appropriate that's why you don't learn that kind of stuff when you're 10 years old, because it's a very rare child is going to be able to grasp those kinds of concepts that young. So yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that you can't be a very smart child and be, learning different things, but the idea that this guy is going in there and reading about all the world religions and philosophies and working through all the different arguments, trying to find out the truth at 10 years old, I'm sorry, I call bullshit on it. And as I'm not saying he's stupid necessarily, as Darwin apologist goes, but he doesn't stand out. He doesn't have any greater vocabulary. He doesn't have any greater insight in anything. He uses all the exact same Dawa crap as the likes of Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawa. Nothing stands out about this guy that says I'm a genius. It really doesn't. Anyway, let's play a bit more of this.
Every kind of cult you can imagine. I researched everything. I thought I'm not going to assume that the size of a belief or a religion or a philosophy determines its truth. I'm just going to see, what these different ideas are. Is there any proof for it? Does it make sense? Are there any problems I can find in it, like contradictions or things like this? And if so, then it's not the truth. So I went through that gradual eliminating process.
Did you start with Islam, or Islam was the last religion to look at for you?
I was aware of Islam, and it seemed deceptively simple.
Yeah, I wonder how you was aware of it. Could it be that you had a Muslim father in the house? Is that a possibility? Maybe. And the fact is, I personally think this guy was probably a Muslim right from the start. But I'll get into there's more concrete stuff than just my assumptions on this, because he does actually lie.
But we don't want to jump to conclusions.
But I'm getting ahead of myself anyway. But we'll listen.
When I first saw it, I thought, it's very simple. Maybe there's not much kind of deep truth in it that I'm aware just by seeing the basics, because you're reading.
Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? When you're a 10-year-old, you don't look for a simple answer, do you? You're always looking for that really complicated, nuanced argument. I mean, what the fuck is he talking about? That's exactly how kids think. They go for the simple answer, which, to be fair, is why kids can be susceptible to religious programming. Because it's much easier to say, oh, there's a man in the sky who, created everything and did this. That's very easy to understand because it's a simplistic concept for a child. So no way is this guy going around going, oh, yeah, Islam's a bit too simple. I've got to research every other major religion in the world and think about this at 10 years old.
Reading a book about different religions, so just present Islam very basic, very simply. It was only when, after further investigation, after I went through a whole bunch of different other religions and beliefs and philosophies, I kind of bumped back into Islam, and I started to ask a question about this. And it was something you might think very small, which is, it talked about Islam. So Islam talked about women having hijab and as an obligation. I was like, well, why does Islam want women to wear hijab then? What's the point of this? So I thought about it. And I said, well, it seems like in the West, we see there is a lot of sexual politics going on in the workplace, sexual tension, and sexuality then becoming used for advertising commodities and goods and things like this.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, even if this is a couple of years into his journey, he's thinking this at maybe, 12 years old now. He's thinking there's a lot of sexual politics in the workplace. Of course, that's what the average 12-year-old thinks, don't they?
Society is becoming very sexualized. And it's leading to a lot of problems, relationship dysfunctions, people leaving their partners, unfaithfulness, a whole bunch of things. And when I looked at the Islamic concept of hijab, I was thinking, well, what's the point of this? And I say, well, what would be the purpose of it, do you think? And I thought, well, maybe it's because they want women to look modest, not show sexuality in public, the hijab and jilbab and everything. So you just happened to come to that conclusion all by yourself.
the Islamic reason, you just came to that to yourself at like 12 years old, maybe 13. You were just like, oh yeah, they were obviously just trying to keep sexuality out of the workplace for this. So that really makes sense. Just came to that conclusion all by himself, everyone.
Okay, so that means then Islam wants society to keep sexuality out of the public view, keep it for the private, because you can't do anything with it, with sexuality in the public. You want to go to work, you want to go to university. Why is sexuality going to be distracting you?
I mean, this is why all the universities and workplaces in the West are just absolute rubbish, aren't they? I mean, we don't produce any science or anything because everyone is just too, horny and trying to get it on with their co-workers. That's why we have no literature, no science, no education. Nobody
Totally
does any work in
obsessed.
the West because they're all just, looking to basically have sex with each other.
Oh God, this is so stupid.
And on that point, let's be honest. What has been the university contributions from the Muslim world in the last 500 years hasn't exactly been stellar. So how's that hijab been working out for you? No disrespect to people who are studying in those countries. I'm not saying there aren't smart people and everything, but if this was such a useful tool for increasing workplace productivity and scientific output and education and everything, it doesn't seem to be working in the Muslim world so well.
I'm just realizing, this was his plan. This is how he does things. He makes people today think that he's actually quite, okay, I'm going to use the word stupid, or not so intelligent, but this is just a ruse. In actual fact, he's a genius who's playing a role, just to fool us into thinking that he's not. But in actual fact, he is. So his strategy is showing us that somebody who is not so smart, apparently, can have deep thoughts, and this is why it's actually making a lot of sense that what he does is correct. So this must be his strategy somehow.
Yeah, but at the same time, he's also some kind of child prodigy that can understand.
Yeah, he's a genius, absolutely. This is why he's just acting as though he's not.
He'd worked out all the world religions by like the age of 12. So yeah, I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Normal guy.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's play on.
Why allow it to distract you in public? It's not fair. It causes issues, in society that I was aware of in the West growing up.
Oh, come on.
Right. This is a bit where I'm actually going to cut into a very short bit from a previous video from 10 years ago, which he was talking about his conversion, because there's an interesting little detail here.
Oh, that's clever.
And I'm just going to play it for you.
One of the first things I saw with Islam was the women's hijab. And it sounds quite odd to say that, but I saw women wearing the hijab, and I just asked myself a question, which was, why does Islam want women to wear hijabs? What's the significance of this? What's Islam trying to achieve? What is the aim that Islam is trying to achieve? And that's a question that I don't think very few people, ask themselves. It's unfortunate. And so I started to kind of query this, and I looked into this. And I thought about it, and it seemed to me, that there was a particular intention behind this. And at the time, I was on the TV. There was this show called Ally McBeal, which is a very strange, wacky show about a neurotic working woman, and it showed that she was a lawyer, and in the place where she worked, there was a lot of sexual tension, a lot of sexual politics. It was every single show was about this.
Right, now, it may not be immediately obvious why I just played that bit, but anybody who knows that show, Ally McBeal, which I do remember it from that time, this was a comedy. It was like a sitcom thing that was, it started in America in 1997 and was first broadcast in the UK in 1998. Now, he grew up and lived in England. Now, a little bit later on in the video, he says at the age of 10, when he was 10, 11, 12, etc., when he was doing all this research into the religion, and in fact, I think he also said it before, it was the early 90s, right? So he's come to the end of his journey. So he's like getting to about the age of 13 or whatever, where he's saying that he this hijab thing is what kind of, started pushing him towards, thinking that Islam was true. And then he says, when this show was on, which was in 1998. So if he was 10, 11 years old in the early 90s, and that show was in 1998, you're talking his actual age would have really been more like 16, 17, 18 when he finally, did this conversion. If you add that up, because he would have been, say, 10, 11 in 1990, 91, he would have been about 18 by the time this happened. Yet he's claiming he was like, I was a Muslim at 14. So you've already got several years. This story does not sound right. So I hope people have kind of followed that. Basically, it seems inconsistent, and I think he was several years older than what he's claiming to be, which would make more sense because it's normally in your late teens that you get into all of this. Now, so first of all, it's inconsistent, but this will also come up later when I talk about what I think his real life story is, because there's a few other details that come out here. But anyway, I just wanted to point out that he's kind of contradicting himself in the dates here. I think he was older when this so-called conversion happened. Anyway.
But drastic, Ally McBeal. Now, I've seen maybe a few seconds, so I never really watch it. But there was no sexual tension as such. It was flirty, but it was not. I don't know. I remember it as a legal show.
Yeah, I mean, it was a comedy. I mean, she was known for wearing very short skirts and stuff in the office and things like that. But and there was you know what these American sitcoms are like. There's loads of like office romance and that kind of stuff going on.
Yeah, sure, but it wasn't. But he's making it out as though this was all about eroticism and things like that.
I can't imagine the show would have been improved with all the women walking around in hijabs. But yeah, I mean, my main point was to show that there is some inconsistency in the dates,
right.
and actually, it sounds like he was It sounds like he was several years older in his late teens when this was going on. So he wasn't quite the child prodigy. And as I say, there are some other reasons which I'll go into as we go through the video why this is important.
So he said, oh, that makes sense. And then it struck me, which is, if there's a purpose of life, and the purpose of life is for human beings, then surely it should encompass every aspect of human life, not just once a week or, in Jummah or in church on Sundays, but every part of the life, including society. So Islam seemed holistic, and it seemed, well, if there is a true religion and true belief, then that looks quite like it or close to it.
Right. I mean, that is just terrible reasoning. That really is. There's nothing that says, if this says it can, it basically is for your whole life. I mean, every cult is like that. Every cult says, yes, you've got to act in this way, and the cult leader is going to control every action, how you take a shit, etc., etc. That does not make the truth claims any more real. So this is really piss poor reasoning. And it also just kind of suggests that he already had these ideas in his head, because this is not a logical way of thinking as far as I can tell. He should know that if he's looking at all these religions. There's plenty of other religions where you could be very pious. I mean, certain branches of Christianity are very much kind of governed day to day, and it's more than just about your personal praying and stuff like that. So this is really poor reasoning as far as I'm concerned.
And I started to ask more questions. I didn't embrace Islam just on that, but I asked more questions, and I encountered more answers, which just blew me away. And so eventually I saw that Islam, I actually tried to refute Islam as I tried to.
Funnily enough, we don't get to hear these other big reasons that blew him away. Notice that we just get this bullshit like about, oh, well, it kind of looks a bit like a cult and it covers your whole life. Not any real reason why this is convinced. What were these great reasons blown away? Were it things like maybe the scientific miracle bollocks? I mean, just per chance, I wonder if that would come up. Oh, dear.
Refute every other religion before that, or belief or philosophy. And Islam just kept answering me back with even more profound answers. And so,
which we're not going to get again. I mean, I just love to know what these answers are, because he knows if he reveals them, they're just going to sound dumb. It will be things like, the numerology. Oh, well, there's an even number of mentions of heaven and hell or something in the. It's got to be that kind of wank, isn't it? Basically, so we're not going to hear these mind-blowing reasons.
So I had to adopt it.
So you didn't have any prejudices about Islam, misconceptions about Islam before reading this? So you didn't have any prejudices about Islam?
Oh, sorry. The reason that repeats is there was an advertisement in the middle of the video which I didn't want to expose everyone to, so I just cut it out. That's why it's repeated.
Misconceptions about Islam before reading this?
The prejudices I had was the common liberal and secular prejudice about religion. Religion doesn't talk about politics. Religion doesn't talk about society or economics or human problems. Religion is just a belief you have where you can pray for things that you want and maybe get them, or it makes you feel good, perhaps, when you feel scared about things. But that was it. Yeah,
so isn't that convenient? Between the ages of 10 and 13, 14, he carried these prejudices about Islam, which also happens to match the exact same Dawa apologetics you hear from every one of these Dawa bros when they talk about secular liberal values and blah blah blah, and it's prejudice against the supernatural and all that. You happen to be, as a non-Muslim 12, 13-year-old, you recognize that you came to those prejudices towards the Quran and towards Islam. Isn't that very fucking convenient?
Sheer
Again,
coincidence.
of course it is. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to. It's not that he's lying. He's definitely not lying. Stops.
No, definitely not.
That was the prejudice. This was early 90s. This is before 9/11, before all this stuff. So it was the common prejudice.
So again, just to confirm, that's the early 90s when he's like 11, 12, 13 years old. So again, the Ally McBeal thing. Apparently, it took like 6, 7 years for him to change from 13 to 14. But
against all religions that was imbibed into me, inculcated into me rather, that I've had as a liberal, as a secular liberal, person in a secular liberal society. So when I encountered Islam was so holistic, that's what shocked me, because I was told that religion doesn't talk about those things. And when I discovered,
by who?
So
who told this little kid that religion doesn't talk about these things? I mean, you wouldn't have even been. I mean, yeah, I suppose probably from the age of 11 years on, when you get into secondary school in the UK, you do start learning kind of bits and pieces about comparative religion and stuff like that. But nowhere is that how they teach that in the class. I remember learning about religion. That's not how you're taught it in class. So it's just Dawa apologetics, and he's trying to project it onto when he was a little kid and saying, "Oh yeah, I already had these thoughts because that's what the society told me." That's not how you taught religion in school.
But he's not. He doesn't specify anything. He always says these things, and that's what you hear. It's always these very vague sort of insinuations, but he doesn't really say what it is that he heard and what it is that you don't say and what it is that you do. So he doesn't really say, okay, I heard this and this made sense. He said, yeah, everything, the holistic approach. What holistic approach? Where does he get this from? I mean, if you read the Quran, I mean, you can't tell me that he's been reading 30,000 hadiths in 1 year to find out what Islam is all about. Come on.
Yeah, he read all of Bukhari between his 10th and 11th birthday. I mean,
no, all 6 Sahih.
all 6
collections,
plus a couple of the secondary ones. Yeah. Oh, and actually, I think lately says he was also reading the tafsirs at the same time. So.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding about that. I'm not even kidding.
But it made more sense that it would have talked about those things. It should talk about those things.
So I think you went through this process of elimination, right? This can't be true, this can't be. So how did you decide that those other religions were not true?
Sure. I mean, okay, this is between the age of 10 and 14. So I look at different religions and I'd ask a number of questions, which is there evidence for this? Is there proof? Was it available to most human beings? Or is this a message that is brand new? Or has it always existed? So when it came with Christianity,
again, let's just pick one of those things, right? Bearing in mind, as he reminded us himself, between 10 and 14, one of his questions as a child was, is this message brand new or is it an older message? Do we really think a 10-year-old kid is asking that kind of question? And what relevance would a child see in that? Again, this is just so made up. This is just every fucking plank of Dawa apologetics about trying to justify the fact that you can't really, basically you got your belief because your parents gave them to you, which is basically what I think happened here. He's using every single line of dialogue that you get from a Dawa apologist and saying, I was thinking about this when I was 10 years old. Bullshit, were you? I'm sorry. This is
but also, but how does he establish that something is true, that something corresponds with reality, if it is old or new? How does that make any sense? Something old can be just as true as something that is brand new. So,
yes, absolutely.
What is his verification process?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, this is why it's just rubbish. But dude says, I remember in RE religious education, we were only taught the basics and the practices of all religions. Yeah, exactly. You weren't preached.
Well, then you were lucky. I was indoctrinated full blast. Onwards, Christian soldier, singing every morning at assembly. Yeah. Come on.
Well, bearing in mind also, I went to a Catholic school, and it was already quite by the 1990s. It was because I'm sort of assuming I'm pretty much a similar age to this guy, and And the comparative religion, it wasn't even preaching Catholicism. That was considered separate from the religious education lesson, which was kind of more world religion. So the idea that he was sitting down in a Catholic school and they were saying, "Oh, no, this is the secular liberal values means that this doesn't apply to your whole life." Do you really think that's what the fucking teacher was saying to this guy? Bullshit. It's just lying.
Idea that you have a human being that comes down to earth and he's actually God apparently, and he dies even though God doesn't die, and that.
Oh, and again, that was handy, wasn't it? The exact dawah apologetics that you use when you're arguing with Christians, you happen to be thinking about that as well at 11 years old. It's just coincidence.
He invented it, Rusty.
Isn't it? I mean, I wonder whether he mentioned something like, well, with the Buddhists, this whole reincarnation thing doesn't work, and with the Hindus, multiple gods. I wonder if he might say something like that to match the dawah apologetics. Let's take a look.
That, and his sacrifice, kind of forgives your sins, even though you're still sinful afterwards, and you still have to repent. So those things didn't make sense to me when it comes to Christianity. When it comes to Judaism, sure, it believes in monotheism, but it seemed very much restricted to this one particular tribal nation of people throughout history. And you didn't see any explanation for other tribes around history or what other people should be doing and following. When you come with Buddhism...
I mean, you could argue that, Islam started out that way for Arabs, basically. I mean, why was the Quran written in Arabic? I mean,
I was just going to say that, yeah.
I mean,
for a very specific group, the language still today, the Quran is only available in one single language for one specific group.
Yeah, exactly.
Human beings are basically born into the world and they reincarnate constantly until they reach enlightenment. And I say,
oh, there was a shock. Brought up reincarnation, that didn't make sense to him. Yeah.
Okay, well, what's enlightenment? Well, enlightenment is when you know the purpose of life or you know some deep truth. And I say, well, you're saying the purpose of human...
Sorry, that's wrong in itself. I mean, a different point, but he's saying, enlightenment means that you know the ultimate purpose of life. That's not what enlightenment is. I mean, that could potentially be it, but
one of the elements, yeah.
Enlightenment could just mean understanding something. I mean,
exactly.
Science is a work of enlightenment, just discovering how things work. So, I mean, that's a stupid claim to say that basically that's what enlightenment it can be, is working out the ultimate purpose of life. I mean, it's just so stupid.
Human beings is to be enlightened, and enlightened means to know your purpose. But then I know my purpose. My purpose is to be enlightened, and it becomes a circular logic. Also,
yeah, if you make that straw man argument, but if you don't look at enlightenment like that, then what you just said is absolute crap.
There's other questions like, if there's no God in Buddhism, or God is not important in Buddhism, who set up the system of rebirths, and was there a first human being? Because you can't have an infinite regress in the past.
I mean, I don't know about you, Stops. This sounds very much like we were hearing from the Muslim Lantern last week when he was talking to that ex-Muslim in that video.
Always the same thing.
That non-Muslim. Just the exact same rhetoric. Apparently, luckily, every single line this guy knew at 11 years old. I mean, was he ever going to be anything else other than a dawah apologist if he happened to know all this stuff in the exact same way they argue when he was 11? I mean, there was no other career path for him, apparently.
Of people being... So what was your first soul, your first body that you were born into? And then where were you before that? They're not answered these questions in Buddhism. Hinduism believes in a similar idea to that, because Buddhism comes off from Hinduism. Mainstream idea of Hinduism believes that there's one God that we come from, but we used to be part of God, and somehow gods can split into pieces, and these pieces are ignorant and powerless. So a part of God is ignorant and powerless, and that you go into you go into reincarnation, you get born, you die, you're born, you die, until you can find a way to get back to God. But you are a part of God. That doesn't make any sense at all whatsoever. So God can be...
Well, actually, I have to question that, because the Muslim belief that God is separate from his from his creation, all that, and it is worse for me, because it's like, well, what did God make the world out of? Either there was already stuff there independent of him, or it comes from God. This stuff, it comes from Allah, and if it comes from Allah, then that means that you're agreeing with that you are essentially part of God. Because or your other option is something from nothing. And I think Islam tends to argue against that position, doesn't it?
What is the message of Islam? Allah creates your soul, and then when you finished your term on earth, what happens? You return to him. So what the fuck is he on about? This is the same principle.
Yeah.
Split into the infinite, unlimited creator can be split into pieces, and these pieces are finite.
Oh yeah, so there's a multiple God thing as well. Was all in there because obviously he's criticizing Hinduism.
It's
So
the same as in Islam. What
Yeah.
the hell is he on about? In Islam, come on, God speaks you into existence. There is no material other than God. And
Yeah.
then out of the existence of God, God creates human beings and the jinn to worship him. And,
Yeah.
and that is the only purpose that you have. This is why you were created, and then afterwards you return to him. So I don't understand. Does he even understand what Islam is?
Well, as I say, either the matter already existed and God just played around a bit, or he's created it out of nothing. So apparently you can get something from nothing, or it's
That's it.
part of
That's
God,
what Islam teaches.
or it's part of God. So you know,
And this is
all of
what
those
Islam
three
teaches. This is
arguments-
out of nothing. He says, I have created you before you were nothing.
Exactly. So, which is essential tenet of them, which they argue against everyone else, saying you can't have something from nothing. So,
Unbelievable.
defeat
Yeah.
it all round.
And these pieces are limited. It doesn't make sense. So these are kind of the process I was going through for many different religions and beliefs.
Also, atheism was also one of the things in the list, right? So you eliminated that as well.
Well, I mean, I followed the typical prejudice that science can answer all questions. At one point, I mean, I've always
What's
been
that to
interested.
do with it?
Oh, wait a second. He said he grew up Catholic. And yet he also, was using what they considered to be atheistic scientific reasoning as well as being a Catholic, as well as having a Muslim father in the household.
At the age of 12, he was an established scientist.
Oh, yeah. Well, he was probably, fucking solving quantum physics problems at the age of 11. So,
Finished his PhD.
God, I mean, how many lies are you going to pile up? And again, you wonder, like, if people wonder, like, why I've titled this, suspect tales or whatever. It's because is anyone really convinced by this? Outside of just pious Muslims, because it's so bad.
Science, I still am. I've always got good grades whenever I did science or physics-based subjects when going for university and so on and so forth. But
Physics-based subjects.
He went
Nobody's
to
actually
university.
studied science talks that way. You wouldn't say that, would you? You would say what discipline you studied. You say, "Oh, well, I was studying,
Not the scientific
theory."
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, you would say something, wouldn't you? Or I was studying cosmology, or I was studying this or that. I mean, physics, and you say physics-based subjects or something. I mean, that is not how a genius-level child prodigy talks. It really isn't.
No.
the idea that I thought
I mean, he's no Goodwill Hunting, is he? From if anyone's seen the movie.
science could answer all questions was an assumption that was taught to me by the society that I was in. But science doesn't talk about what is beyond matter. It talks about how matter behaves, and that's it. So
No, that isn't actually just it. But yeah, it doesn't assume that there is something beyond matter, because that's religion. And obviously science isn't going to do that. It will look at questions that it can attempt to answer. But if you just say God did it, well, then that's not science. So yeah.
how fast it goes, and how it operates, it doesn't talk about what ultimately it's made up of. It doesn't talk about where it comes.
The fuck are you
Of
talking
course it
about?
does.
I mean, that's the whole premise of particularly like the quantum world is finding out. We're going down smaller and smaller and smaller to try and discover the very the smallest possible building block. So I mean, that's
Yeah, but he's on the spiritual coming from. So
Yeah,
he
it has
says
to be made
what
out
is the first mover and things like that.
yeah, it has to be God's will at the bottom of it or some crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just,
Comes from. It doesn't talk about where it's all going. It just talks about
it doesn't talk about where it's all going. You've literally got you've got scientific theory or hypotheses at least about the heat death of the universe. That is pretty much telling you where it's going in like trillions and trillions of
Fantastic.
years.
He's
he know-
talking spiritually. Where is the soul going?
Yeah, well, again, if we want to talk about the meaning of life, yeah, I mean, that is it's not exactly, I mean, it's a related, I mean, science can kind of form part of that to an extent, but yeah, obviously that question is beyond just science, but, let's carry on, because otherwise we're going to get through this.
how matter behaves. And then scientists either try to extrapolate saying that, oh, well, matter will always be the same way forever, or matter was always existing there forever. But
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the possibility that matter has been there in one form or another, But it doesn't. I mean, the very thing. What scientist has ever said matter always remains the same way?
Exactly.
This guy studied physics. Really, he got really good grade in physics, and this is what he thinks. Again, anyone smell a rat here with the claims he's making?
That doesn't make sense because, again, infinite regress. If we to get to this point in
Yeah, I mean, somebody in the chat said, "Can this guy go for?" I think it was Rising Damp. Can this guy go talk for 5 minutes without mentioning infinite regress? Apparently not. Even though this infinite regress thing has been debunked 1,000 times, and we've talked about it many times, I don't think it's worth going into again. But yeah, he just thinks he can say infinite regress, and therefore, my God makes sense. But yeah, he does mention it constantly.
time, we had to wait an infinite amount of time to finish. Well, infinity doesn't finish. We never reach this point in time. So the fact that I'm right here sitting in front of you.
I know it stops. I mean, I would do it. It's just we've done this so many times.
It's crazy. It's unbelievable that somebody in today's day and age will still bring up this stupid. This is idiotic, really. I'm sorry. I'm starting to get mad because this is so ridiculously stupid what he's saying. Come on, please.
I know, but this is why I pick these videos. It's part of my reasoning. It's like I'm trying to wind you up as well. Stops. I'm seeing how mad.
Yeah, but what does it show us? It shows us what Islam is doing to the human brain. It fucks it up. It gives you it limits you. It stifles you. It puts you into a little bubble, and then the only thing that you're allowed to see is just what is inside the bubble. Anything that is outside, you're not allowed to see. That's it. And this is exactly what we can see here in front of us. This is ridiculous. This is, I
like Quran only fans. Ali McBeal led him to Islam. This is a proof. Yeah, and you know this. Why was this guy watching Ali McBeal in the first place? I wonder.
Because it was her legs.
He was in his late teens and she was in a short skirt. Yeah, he wouldn't admit that though.
Proves to me that God exists, or there was a creator that initiated matter to move and to change and so on and so forth. That's why
it's an assertion. That's not proof. Number one, you can't talk about proof. You're talking about evidence, and your assertion is not evidence. Just because you jump to conclusions and you say, "Oh, there's something here. There's a hydrogen atom. That must mean there's a God. There's a tree. That must mean there's a God, and the clouds. So there must be a God." Please, that is not evidence. That is your stupidity.
I gotta say, stops. He almost. There's another. He might just be coming up to it actually, where he pretty much says that he doesn't use hydrogen atom, but something else. Basically, just like this exists, so therefore God must exist. I mean, this is how poor his reasoning is. It might just be coming up actually. Let's just play it.
Okay, I'm going to calm down now.
So, after being convinced that Islam must be the true religion, what steps did you take? What was your ultimate, journey to accepting Islam? Can you tell us about the phases?
You got himself circumcised.
As I was reading through the Quran, but also reading through tafsir, explanations and commentary on the Quran, as well as all the different books I could find on Islam.
Bearing in mind, this is before he's accepted, before he reaches the age of 14. He's been all the tafsirs, thousands of hadiths, as well as all this other philosophical study. Just to remind him, just pre-14.
Does it not occur to him that the fact that you have all these books, the fact that you have all these explanations, all these explanatory, it's all literature that you find, all explaining this one little book of 6,000 odd little sentences, that actually demonstrates to you that this is silly. That doesn't it occur to you that already eliminates the fact that this can be a God? Because no God would be so stupid to bring out something like the Quran, which is so badly written that it requires, I don't know how many hundreds of volumes to explain how bad it is written and to make some sense out of it. Come on, this should show you that there is something wrong here.
I would agree, unless maybe if you had a Muslim father in the household and you kind of already believed in Islam, then you might not think that. But again, this cannot be the reason why he's into Islam.
Yeah, then you're already in the bubble, like I said. Exactly.
Yeah, it's because of the, he did like 500 years worth of research between the ages of 10 and 13. And that's the reason that he's a Muslim.
It was... when I would find something that didn't make sense, I realized after thinking about it for ages and ages that it wasn't that the text didn't make sense, but I had brought into it an assumption, and the assumption was leading me to not understand it properly, right? And
What assumption were you bringing into it at 13? Was this the liberal, secular, demonic values of the society that told you the Quran can't be true or something? What assumption? I mean, this is such bollocks.
Well, 2 plus
So
2
my
is
pros-
5.
Go ahead.
If the Quran says, okay, I asked a Muslim, I said, what happens if you read something in the Quran and then science tells you something different? And he says, then we wait until science comes to the conclusion that the Quran is right. That was his answer, really.
We wait until the science catches up with the Quran. I mean,
Correct.
we
That was
waiting
his
until the end
answer.
of time.
And I put it as a short onto my channel because this was really his answer.
That's brilliant. I mean, that just shows the lack of thinking involved.
Of going through the Quran began to purify me of my assumptions that I brought, my baggage that I brought into Islam, right? And so, alhamdulillah,
What baggage is a 10-year-old bringing into Islam? Again, he's not explaining it. He's just claiming it.
Yeah.
That's a good slogan. Don't need to explain, I just claim.
My steps for encountering Islam and becoming a Muslim was really one of first, I was interested, I was intrigued that this sounds like something that could be true.
Yeah, based on what? With the Muslim father in your home? No. The thousands of books I read. Yeah.
The step of I adopt it as a hypothesis. So a hypothesis is something that you believe is the best explanation, but you're not 100% certain. Maybe there could be a better explanation, but from all the available evidence you have, it's the best one. And
really, I mean, again, I'm echoing kind of what you're saying, but stops. But like, if you sat there with the Quran as an explanation for all of reality, and that is the best option, then for me, as far as I'm concerned, I've already gone insane at that point. If this is the best explanation you can come up with, it's so ridiculous. There's so many errors in it, and it's just gibberish, half of it. I mean, if that is your best explanation, you didn't research anything.
And after going through and my knowledge increasing more and more and more, and I started to ask questions like, well, what if there was let's say I was going to create a religion and I was going to take Islam as a basis, but I'm going to change something of it. Would it be just as good or better? And as I did that process, I realized that every time if you make any kind of change to Islam, it ends up with a contradiction or something that doesn't make sense.
Really? He's really going to make that claim? Like, for example, so if you fix the inheritance error in the Quran, that will make it not make sense. So keeping that error there is what makes the Quran definitely from God. Keeping slavery in there. If you got rid of the slavery and the sex slavery, then it wouldn't make sense.
But you can take simple things, like, for example, change it around that mountains are not put on top of the earth, but actually grow from the earth upwards. How would that make it worse?
I mean, this is so ridiculous. I mean, you could even just take out loads of the repetitive stuff in the Quran.
Yeah, did he go to the morgue and slap a corpse with a piece of steak?
Or how about don't have verses right next to each other that have nothing to do with each other, which happens all throughout the Quran? It just jumps from one topic to another. How about don't do that? Because it's easier to read a book when it doesn't look like it's gone through a fucking blender. I mean, God dear. I mean, to actually say that. Also, the other point I want to address, right? He says, oh yeah, and again, he's 13 years old at this point, maybe, on the brink of accepting Islam. But at 13 years old, he's thinking, oh yeah, what if I made a religion, even though I don't believe in this yet, but I based it on Islam? Again, does that really sound like something that somebody who isn't a Muslim would say? Because why not say that about any other possible religion we're looking into? I mean, I just don't buy it as a 13-year-old saying this shit anyway. But who but a Muslim would say that? No one. It's just so fanciful. It's just sorry if I keep repeating myself, but it's worth emphasizing just how unconvincing this story is. And
so I realized then that how Islam explains the universe, human existence, the existence of animals, the planets, everything, whether it's pleasure and suffering, and whether a finite lifespan we have, all these things were.
You need the Quran to explain why there's a finite lifespan. Like people don't just see stuff dying, and there's your explanation. I mean,
He doesn't. He don't, I don't think he realizes how ridiculous he actually sounds. I don't think he knows the contents of the Quran actually, because the Quran copies so many things from the old Sumerians, from the old Jewish fables. I mean, all these stories that you get in the Quran, you find in older civilizations. I mean,
Yeah, all the
even like
embryology stuff.
details, like how we split Earth and the heavens apart. This is literally mentioned in Gilgamesh epic. So
Yeah.
what? These are just copies of copies of copies. These are stories. Like there's so many stories that are simply just taken from the Bible, and that's
And
it.
written worse in many ways. I mean, they're even less coherent than they are in the. At least the Bible has a bit more of a narrative structure in general. I mean, I'm
Right.
not saying the Bible is like some brilliant book, but it's kind of it's a much easier read.
Yeah,
And
but
there
there's
are
a chronology attached to it, which you don't get in the Quran.
Yeah, no, I'd even say this, and I'm not, you could say it's my Christian bias or whatever, but I mean, I would say there are bits of the Bible you can read that can even be quite interesting or can be kind of, you
Stories,
can
yeah.
maybe, there's bits and pieces in there. In the Quran, there is nothing laudable about it. That's why it took me so long to read, because it is terrible. Anyways, let's carry on with this, man.
Answered in Islam, to the point that there was actually no other possible answer that could answer all of this. So then I eventually came to the conclusion that Islam is the only possible explanation for reality. And then I had yaqeen, then I had absolute certainty in the deen of Islam.
What was the last thing that you said, okay, now I'm going to become a Muslim tomorrow? What happened that you decided?
Well, it was at 14 years old. And that was when I adopted Islam as, you could say, a hypothesis, which is it's the best explanation that I know of. So as a human being who is searching for purpose, I'm obliged to follow the best explanation presented to me. And I don't see any contradictions in it. So there's no reason I should say no.
You never read the inheritance error then. I mean, if you need a contradiction, that's all you'll ever need in the Quran. It is 100% irrefutable. So he obviously missed that bit.
Yeah, but hang on.
I didn't know.
What is the concept of Islam? The concept of Islam is that you need to believe that there is a creator and that you need to worship this creator. Okay. On the other hand, it says there's no compulsion. But if there is no compulsion, then there should be no consequence if you do not believe in this creator. But there is. So you have the number one functionality of Islam is the worshipping of the creator, and there is no compulsion. Unless you go to hell, of course. So
Yeah,
this is the basic, the fundamentals of Islam. This is already a contradiction.
Oh, new person in chat. How does this channel not have loads of subscribers? Because Allah's punishing us, I think. It must be that or something like that. I don't know, but spread the word. If you like what you're hearing, spread the word. And I also have a main channel that's in the you'll find it listed on the kind of homepage if you like.
No, but there's a very easy answer, because we get shut down all the time, because Muslims are really shit scared. So what they do is they create groups, and I've seen this because I was part of one of those groups, where they distribute a script and they tell people, go and report this channel to Google, saying that it's spreading lies and spreading violence and spreading incentivizes. What do you call this? Incentivize, whatever. It causes alarm and the violence to other people, and then of course it automatically shuts down the channel. So we always have to start from scratch every couple of months. This is why it always takes time to come back up again, and this is just what's happening at the moment.
Well, to be fair, I mean, this channel has been around for a while, but I mean, I think the damage from the last time it happened just took so long to kind of recover.
Yeah.
And then, so you've got problems with the algorithm; they don't tend to promote it. But
Yeah.
I mean, Allah is mean, by the way. But yeah, if you like what you're hearing, spread it to other people. That's how we get more subs. But thank you.
We're not begging, but we're not saying please spend money. We don't say donate money. We're not doing this for money.
I do that on my main
paying
channel
for this, okay?
I do that on my main channel, but this is a freebie. So
yeah.
Anyways, let's carry on with Abdullah, because he's really exciting me with this very convincing story.
know that you have to testify the shahada in a formal kind of way. I just thought it was something you just believe in. I said, okay, well, I believe this. And so, yeah. So my shahada was simply going up to my mother and saying, Mom, I think I'll be a Muslim. That was my shahada, basically. And, my mother, from a secular background, but a liberal secular background, religion wasn't so...
Liberal, secular, Catholic that sent you to all right, whatever. She probably turned around and said to him, yeah, you were raised a Muslim by your father. I just put you in the Catholic school because in the UK they tend to have better grades than average. Which is actually true. So
important. So she didn't really think it was a big deal. She thought just a passing phase, because parents see their children go through different phases and they try different things or different hobbies. So
yeah, maybe she didn't think it was a big deal because she was already married to a Muslim. I mean, it's just a small possibility.
She thought this was just maybe a hobby I would do. After almost 30 years later, I think now she realizes that it's a bit more than a hobby. Right? Yeah. So, alhamdulillah.
Yeah. When you started preaching Islam, giving dawah to people, were there anyone that became Muslim around your circle, your family?
Well, I mean, as I started investigating Islam, I would always tell my mom about this, and obviously, my father as well. And over time, alhamdulillah, they saw changes in me. I became a better son to them. I mean, I came from a secular liberal society, and you had rebellious kids, and it's different from the kind of rebellious kids you might think, because all kids are kind of rebellious in some way. But Western rebellious kids are much more disrespectful to their parents compared to...
Yeah, and how do you know that? How many other countries have you grown up in? And right, and look, this is I wanted to get into this because this is part of the reason why I brought up the whole Ali McBeal thing and the fact that it sounds like he was actually several years older than what he's claiming. This sounds like an excuse to me to basically saying, you know what, I was acting up as a kid. I was rude and disrespectful to my parents. And number one, I'm going to blame it on society because it can't just be that I was a little shit. But secondly, this suggests to me that this guy was acting up, right? Maybe he was on, might have been on the risk of getting expelled from school. And his father thought, well, you know what? Maybe if I just get him into Islam, then he'll start behaving himself. If I get the discipline on him. This is what I'm thinking. So I'm thinking, I reckon his dad was probably a fairly casual Muslim, but this guy was acting up and therefore he got him into it and he went full bore into it because a lot of these converts have troubled backgrounds, don't they? They're either their lives are falling apart or they're into crime like Kenny Boma and they were coming out of prison and stuff like this. And I'm starting to think that the true story here is that he was a really troublesome kid getting into all kinds of shit. And then his dad just thought, well, let's chuck him a bit of Islam so we can discipline him. This is my theory. Now, I can't prove that.
Could well be. Yeah. No, but it's a good thesis, yeah.
This is what I think.
Other cultures and beliefs and so on and so forth. And so when I answered what my purpose in life was, I saw the errors of my ways, and I saw that I increased in gratitude for what my parents did. But when my parents saw this, when they see that their son is working harder, is politer, is more well-behaved.
See, so he was, he wasn't perfect. This really does sound to me like he was a troubled child. And he's rewritten this backstory. He's rewriting his own history because he's got into really hardcore fundamentalist, Salafi bullshit. He's now trying to rewrite that backstory to say, you know what? No, actually, I was a child genius. And at 10 years old, I was doing all this research. Not that I was some scumbag kid who was getting in trouble at school and probably involved in petty crime and stuff. Now, I'm not actually accusing him of that. I'm just saying that, to me, that sounds more convincing than what he's saying.
Yeah, but come on, I was young, really. And I did these things. I was chucked from school because I was a really naughty guy. But this is because of my background, because I came from a British school, which is highly restrictive. And then I got to an international school, which was totally lenient. And I couldn't handle the freedom because I was never taught how to handle freedom. But then I found out what my limits were. I found out how I belonged into society without Islam. So I found my own restrictions on my own line, my own lane, without having to be physically or mentally tortured by a religion. So it happens. Yes, I understand his background because it happened to me, sure. But then you can't say, yeah, it's because of Islam. People tend to find these things, This is how you interact with society. That's how you learn.
Yeah, I absolutely. And by the way, I'm not having a go at him as let's assume what I'm saying is more or less accurate. I wouldn't be judging him for that because, as you say, there's lots of kids go through that, and there's all sorts of reasons that they do, and then a lot of people fix themselves up and they become productive adults in society. It's just, as you say, it's the life journey of a lot of people. But it just, everything he's saying sounds so unconvincing to me that this is more likely what I'm saying.
It's the old thing. You have a story. You have this traditional fairy tale, and now what you're doing is you're attaching everything around you to that fairy tale to make it match. And this is how you are sort of justifying to yourself that you are believing this because it makes sense. But this is you sort of projecting everything so that it does make sense. It's not naturally making sense. It's you making sense out of it.
Absolutely. See, Rising Damp, I put your comment up. I actually thought you were going to say this story has larger holes than the Quranic narrative, but you went for the top of his head instead. So
it does look funny sometimes. Yeah.
All right, we've already reached the hour mark, and we've still got a bit of this to go. So
okay,
I'll try and pause it less, and we'll see if we can get through this in a more efficient time.
It wasn't perfect, but they saw a radical change in me. How can you hate that? Right? How can you fear that? I think adab conquers more than ideas do sometimes. People just see the change in your adab al-akhlaq, and that impresses them and inclines their heart towards you more or more effective than any hours of preaching you can do or speaking you can do. The one difficulty is it is hard for the parents to see their child, teach them about life. So I changed your nappy, right? And
he was teaching his parents about life now, because again, he's the child prodigy and he's the most moral. And now he's a Muslim, so obviously he's perfect.
That's what parents do. They teach you about life.
No, he's teaching his parents about life. That's what he's doing.
My goodness.
Sorry, I said I wouldn't pause it. Let me carry on.
And now you're going to tell me about what I should be doing in life. So there was some of that, but eventually, like my father kind of rediscovered, I suppose you could say, Islam for himself.
Rediscovered? Oh, so he was a Muslim all along. That's just convenient, isn't it? You left that bit out at the start of the story, didn't you? He was a Muslim. Okay.
Yeah, but you suspected it, Casual.
Yeah. Well, obviously, look, I have read this, watched this in advance, so this is not.
Okay.
Me, but, I want to build. This is an entertainment show. I want to give people, the illusion that it could go either way.
And for my mother, she became a kind of a nominal Muslim. It's not 100%.
So he converted his mum as well, apparently. Or was she always a nominal Muslim? And the fact that, did you even go to a Catholic school? Because I'm starting to doubt this as well. But if he did, as I say, I can guarantee his mum, it might not have been Catholic, just thought, you know what, this is the closest religious school. Because there weren't as many kind of Muslim schools around in the early 90s as there are now. I mean, they're all over the place now. But back then, she probably had less choice. She thought, well, Catholic school was probably the closest thing I can find. Doesn't this sound more likely than what he's saying?
100% perfect, you could say, because the thing is that she doesn't have many Muslims around her, right? And so
except her husband.
All her friends, or most of her friends, are Catholic or secular and so on and so forth. So it's very hard because we're social creatures as human beings. You need to have encouragement. But alhamdulillah, she did say the Shahada. Some people's.
So not only is he a child genius, he's read every single other religion in the world and found all the flaws in them before, at 10. He's managed to sort out his own life to become this amazing person. He's made his own father rediscover Islam, and he's converted his mother. And this is what, by the age of 15 or something?
Yeah, I was going to add that. Exactly,
what else has this guy done? He's cured cancer. He's going to get us to the moon. It's such fucking bullshit. Oh dear.
Stories are a bit more romantic, you could say. My one was more this gradual realization. For both myself and eventually for my parents too.
When you look at the Quran, what kind of book do you see from the perspective of your areas of interest?
When you read the book, the Quran, it is unlike any book you've ever read. Even when you see the translations, it doesn't seem like something a very capable human being could ever attain.
Yeah, see, I don't know whether he like misspoke there or something, but I would agree. If you were a capable human being, you wouldn't have written that book. Absolutely, because it's a mess.
Because usually people who are very good at writing books and very good at writing, they have these very limited structures they think information should fit into. Yeah, so chapters which only have a few points in them, and then they move to the next chapter, move to the next chapter.
Yeah, only a few points. What you should do is you should cram in 2,000 different points and change it every sentence, like the Quran does. That's a really good way of doing it, isn't it? Let's not have it make any sense at all. Let's be talking about women's rights 1 minute and then be talking about the fucking flood or something in the next sentence.
Yeah, why have organization and structure? Who needs that?
Yeah, oh, well, hi, Thunderous is back. It's unlike any book because no capable person could write such gibberish. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And like beating your wife. Yeah, I mean, that was lovely in there as well. I mean, oh, Jesus.
The thing with the Quran is that one verse, its meaning can change depending on what question you ask. And you can read things that superficially don't seem connected, but you feel in the back of your mind there is a structure beneath it. My advice to anyone reading the Quran is have a conversation with the Quran.
Yeah, take some LSD and have a conversation because it will make more fucking sense than if you read it when you're sober. I would agree with that piece of advice, to be honest.
Not just passive reading. Ask questions. And you might think, well, I asked questions to a book, how can it answer me? But you'd be surprised how an ayah you think was very basic, didn't really have much explanation, how it can answer questions you've never ever even contemplated or thought of. It's a book you can just keep on rereading again and again. Muslims today are more preoccupied with the sound of the Quran rather than the meaning of the Quran.
No, this is projection. This is intentional. They're trying to get you away from the contents. They're trying to get you into emotional aspects and not into the facts of the Quran. Because if you read the Quran, you automatically become an atheist. This is the whole point. And does he not question that, or doesn't he look at reality? Doesn't he see that you have a couple of, I don't know, millions of Muslims and everybody understands it differently? You know, if you have 10 Muslims asking them a question about the contents of a sentence in the Quran, you get 11 opinions because nobody agrees what the Quran actually says.
Yeah, exactly.
There's even a hadith that talks about this. I mean, sometimes people say that the hadith is da'if, but I don't know. It seems to predict things very interesting. It talked about the Muslims at the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ were more interested in the meaning of the Quran.
Yeah,
He's just contradicted himself.
No, I think he's right. They were thinking, what the fuck does any of this gibberish mean? That's probably what they were saying. It's just like, I thought you were going to, invade that tribe. Let's get on with doing that.
Yeah, but he just said they're more interested in the sound of the Quran.
Yeah, I mean, oh, hi, Hassan. Nice to see you, mate. It's not like an ordinary book because
he can't keep away. Wow.
A collection of outbursts over 23 years. Hassan, that is a brilliant way to describe it. I'm going to have to steal that for another video, actually. That's brilliant. Nice to see you, mate.
But there'll come a time when Muslims will be more interested in the pronunciation of the Quran and the sound, but not the meaning so much.
Yeah, because they've given up on trying to make any sense of it, probably. The Imam says, yeah, this is what it means, and they just accept it, yeah. So I kind of actually agree with him on that point, but for different reasons.
And I think that should be reversed. Ask questions of the Quran, have a discussion. Ask questions, why does the Quran use this word and not another word? The Quran is very precise.
Hang on a minute, because the Quran is very precise. A minute ago, he just said, oh, the Quran has all these layers of meaning and it doesn't look like it's obvious. And then you ask a different question, you get a different meaning. It's also very precise. How can those things be fucking true at the same time? That is a complete contradiction. If it's precise, it means it's very exact. It can't be exact if it's got all these different meanings depending on, whether you're wearing socks when you ask it a question or something. I mean, what the fuck? Sorry, I'm ranting now.
Very precise book. Why does it use the words it uses? Once you ask those questions, the Quran opens up even more to you. So that would be my advice.
As a convert and a da'i, as a revert, what is the most common prejudice people have against Islam and how do you respond to it?
The problem is that depends on which society you're speaking of. So now after 9/11 in the West, the perception is that Islam is violent and it's barbaric and it has punishments which are barbaric and it restricts all kinds of things and it restricts women and it restricts being quote unquote free.
I mean, to be fair, are any of those things not true?
Yes.
I mean, like, and don't get me wrong. Again, always we'll make this qualification. I'm not talking about all this. There's plenty of nice Muslims, plenty of peaceful Muslims. But if you look at the actual text, you can make a case very easily for all of those descriptors of Islam if you're going to take the orthodox kind of interpretations of them. So he's sitting there saying all these things as if what, they're not true? I mean, come on.
Whatever that means. Now, before 9/11, the perspective of Islam was that Islam was just a religion, and all religions are kind of based in the past, and they don't talk about modern day problems.
To be honest, I don't think most people in the West really knew anything about Islam before 9/11. And you're talking kind of, especially a few years before when you haven't got anything on the internet about it. So I don't think people thought anything about Islam. It was only once it started causing the many problems with things like terrorism and social issues and the wanting to implement blasphemy laws and live by Sharia and all this crap and the grooming gangs and all this stuff starts coming out. That's when people start looking into it and thinking, yeah, well, we can kind of see where some of this stuff is coming from.
That's a very common misconception, and it's one that even is in the Muslim world today. After colonialism, the Western education systems or even influence, Muslims themselves have that misconception about Islam. They think Islam is something based in the past and it can't answer modern problems. Islam can answer problems, modern day problems, better than the solution that the West can bring. But we don't realize it. We think that.
What modern problems? I mean, I can't actually remember this, but I don't think he mentions any modern problems. But you can imagine what he actually thinks. What those modern problems going to be? They're going to be, oh well, it'll fix alcohol and drug abuse because it's banned, and it'll fix gambling problems because it's banned, and it will fix what they consider to be sexual promiscuity because it's banned, unless you obviously got 4 wives. These are probably the big problems. Where's Islam on, say, climate change or potential problems with artificial intelligence or nuclear war? Or does Islam have any answers for actual real questions like that, or shortage of resources like water on the planet and things like that? Like, what real problems are you talking about here, mate? It doesn't solve anything.
Cell research.
Sorry. It's obviously we're getting to the end of this now. I'm getting more and more ranty. I'm like you, Stops. It's going to wind me up a bit now. But look, I think this is partly why the audience comes. They want to hear us losing our shit. So,
well, I did. I'm now calming down again because it's yeah.
The problem is I didn't have a cigarette rolled either, so I'm dying for a cigarette, but I can't.
Oh yes.
We need more people on the panel so I can roll a cigarette while they're talking. Anyways, let's carry on with this.
It's just about praying 5 times a day. It's just about going to Jummah. It's just about tajweed, your pronunciation of the Quran. Islam is much more than that. It is a full way of life.
We see some people who, despite seeing clear evidences, don't become Muslim. What is the reason behind this, do you think?
Well, I'll say there's 2 categories of people who resist Islam. One of those is obviously, you might call them, they have emotional reasons. So they are already invested. It's called the sunken cost fallacy.
I mean, what a fucking projection that is. I mean, that is basically all of these Dawah guys are doing this. They devote their life to it. They're all rated, despite this guy claiming to be a convert. I think we demonstrated that's a dubious claim at best. But the sunken cost fallacy, they go hard on in this. When no matter how much you show that Islam is obviously not true, that there's contradictions all over the place, they'll just double down harder because they are so invested in it. So to accuse anyone else who has doubts about Islam being true is the exact opposite. Particularly if you already are a Muslim and you become an ex-Muslim, it's the opposite of sunken cost fallacy.
Exactly. I was just going to say, does he understand what he's saying?
Yeah, because obviously you've already had your life up until that point dictated to and directed by Islam. So it's the exact opposite. You are risking everything to say, look, I'm leaving, I'm going because this doesn't make sense. So it's just absolutely stupid. Oh, sorry, the answer to your question, Drastic, is it's the Jews. Well, yeah. Actually, there's been precious little anti-Semitism in this one, Thunderous, but yeah, it's probably lurking in the background.
There we go. It's where you've invested so much of your time, effort, your life, your hopes and your dreams into something false that you don't want to give up because you've already invested so much. You want to keep on investing. The second kind of people, and those are the people I'm interested in, they are those who they have assumptions, and those assumptions blind them from actually seeing the truth of Islam. People might assume, they say, there's so many different religions, there's so many different ideas of God, so they must all be wrong.
No one claims that. That's not the argument, for fuck's sake. You don't say.
What about all the other groups?
Oh.
What about all the other people who have experienced Islam and said, no, sorry, that's not for me. It doesn't make sense. What about the people who look at Islam and go and look at the factual side of things and say, oh, no, sorry, that doesn't convince me. There's so many different possibilities. And he says, no, there's only two.
No, but stop. It's even more fundamental than that. That's not what the argument is. I mean, the argument, if we're going to talk about multiple religions, is that they can't all be true. The argument isn't that they must all be wrong. The argument is that because they all make competing claims, they can't all be true. But if you're arguing from a skeptic point of view, you're not automatically ruling out every religion just because there's more than one. So he doesn't even know the basic argument. I mean, this is such a fucking straw man. And he thinks that this is what non-believers come with that assumption. It just, again, but IQ 150, guys, child prodigy, this man, and he doesn't know the basics.
But he says if they're all wrong, one of them must be right. This is his illogical thinking.
No, but he's saying that this is how non-believers approach it, and that he just
and that's silly,
right? That's an assumption, and it's a quite common one amongst many atheists.
No, it's not. Atheists do not have that assumption. You're an idiot.
And so on. But I could simply point to them and say, okay, in the past, there were so many theories about what the sun was. Yeah. Was it a flat disc? Is it an upturned bowl with a bowl of fire? Or is it a sphere? Oh, could someone say, well, there's so many different theories about the sun, that the sun doesn't exist? Say, no.
Right, so he compounds his error by putting the usual kind of dawah thing of failing to make a proper analogy. The sun, we can all look up in the sky and see it exists. It's not the same as talking about whether Islam is true or whether Allah is real. So that is a fucking failed analogy on every level.
One's right, the rest are wrong. Just because there's different ideas doesn't mean they're all wrong. Yeah, so that's an assumption. So in Islam, we don't say that every word for God, for one God, in every culture for our civilization is false. We simply say that not all ideas of the divine are true. If you believe in 3 in 1, or you believe that God has split into parts, or there's multiple gods, or that God has a family, that's false. But if you believe in one God, whatever you want to call him throughout history, you want to call him Eloh, which is or Allah, you want to call him Dios, or Tanri, right? This is all, it's the same word. You're describing the same thing in different languages. So,
yeah, what the hell is it? I mean, what relevance is this? So you're so tolerant that if somebody uses a different word for a god that conforms to Islam, you'll accept it. Big fucking deal. I mean, what is the point of this?
This is his appeal to the inherent belief that every human being has that there must be some sort of a god.
Yeah, but it's just like, it's just, yeah. All right, I'm going to carry on. Right, we've only got a couple of minutes left of this, everyone. So if you had a bit too much of Abdullah, we're nearly at the end.
That's an example of an assumption that people hold that gives us as a roadblock. And so when we encounter atheists, deists, or people of different religions, those who are sincere amongst them, the only thing that stops them from becoming Muslims is their assumptions. So inshallah, the work of the da'i is to destroy their assumptions. And then what does the Shahada do? The Shahada starts out with a negation first. It says, La ilaha.
I mean, sorry, just to address that, it doesn't matter whether you're an atheist, whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Hindu, whether you're a Jew, a deist, whatever. There are so many problems with Islam in terms of the text, in terms of the contradictory claims, in terms of just the anti-reality nature of what is on offer in Islam. Again, he's acting as if like, oh, well, the atheists are just dishonest and everyone else is just like missing the point. No, it doesn't matter what your background is. You can pull this apart very easily by an internal critique on about 100 different points. So what he said is absolute crap.
Right, so there's all these idols, all these humans, statues, pieces of wood, all these things, whether it's volcanoes you worship, or the sun you worship, or the moon you worship, all these are
I mean, wasn't Allah a moon god to begin with? I think. Sorry, let's not go down that road.
False idols, right? All these gods are false except the one God which is beyond creation.
How did you find strength in those times? Where did you find strength when you were by yourself and no one around you was Muslim?
One of the biggest questions I find Muslims, people who are born into Muslim families in the Muslim world today, is they ask about being strong on your deen, or if you're not publicly manifesting your deen, or if you're not calling to it, it's because you maybe have a weakness or you have a struggle in yourself, which is hard to reconcile. For me, I always found that strange. If you understand that your purpose of life is something, it's following this deen, there's a creator, he made you, there is no other meaning in life except obeying him, following him, what he says, how is his guidance, then it's pointless to do anything else. Because if I'm trying to follow my parents or follow society, but these things are going to pass away, they are not my God, they didn't create me, so there's no point. When I find Muslims...
I mean, this sounds almost kind of nihilistic in a way. He's basically saying the only thing you should be doing in your life is praying, and that's it. And anything else is like a distraction. I mean, this almost sounds like he's, being a monk in a cave or something?
Yeah, but he says that other people make assumptions, but he's the one making assumptions. He's the one saying, well, I need to do something and I need to obey. What are you obeying? Well, the God. Well, how do you know what this God wants? You have no clue. You don't know what this God is. You have no brain capability to understand what a God actually is. You can't even define one. And then you say you need to obey a God, and you're assuming that what it says in the Quran is what the God wants you to do. And that is your assumption. That's the only thing that you have. Assumptions and projections. Finished.
Yeah, true.
Are preoccupied with these things. It really baffles me because I came in with the assumption, and many reverts and converts do. It's not just me. Ask any convert and revert, they'll say they are shocked when they see the Muslim world, because for them, they knew what life was like before guidance. That when they had guidance wasn't just simply, oh, here's what to do. This is the only meaning for human existence. Humans who have access to this, who now know it, follow anything else out. It would be pointless. Say someone went for a job interview, right, in a corporate law office or whatever. They came with a suit and they did very well in the interview. They got the job and they're going to earn lots of money and there's lots of respect. And they come in and then they start, let's say, playing football in the office and they don't do anything else. You're like, you're meant to be doing this job here. You're here to work and do this job.
Again, another terrible analogy. Somebody like my kingdom for a horse, my kingdom for a Muslim who can make a correct analogy. If anyone could ever point to one, please let me know, because I will faint. What the hell? I mean, no one is saying that like you're not I mean, even if you're a believing Muslim, who's saying that they're not worshipping God as well as doing all these other things? So again, I mean, this has kind of gone so far off the topic now anyway, but it's just in babbling. But even when he goes on to other topics, it just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, don't worry. Right, we really are in the last minute of this, so I think I'll just run it to the end because I think he's just talking complete shit now. So we'll let him run out of speed, and then we'll or steam, and then we'll do a little summary.
Job. Why are you playing football in the office? That's the equivalent of Muslims who they have this purpose of life, but they are preoccupied with these childish things which don't have any meaning, like national honor or patriotism or nationalism or their family honor or just making money or following popular culture. These things have no meaning, though. Why are you following this? There's no...
Because life would be pretty fucking terrible if all you did was read the Quran all day. That's why
that's
they do
the point.
it. I mean, this is the reality, isn't it? About particularly with Islam, which try to, put it into every aspect of your life. You would go stark raving mad if that's all your life was. And when you look at these jihadis, they're not exactly well functioning mentally, are they, as individuals who really do try and go down that road? Everyone needs a variety in their life. And the fact that he's pissed off that they're not all as fundamentalist and all as obsessed with religion as he is. And I doubt he is even himself. This is all just performative, I think. I mean, I'm sure he goes to watch the football, and I'm sure he, does this and that and watches the telly. So, just preaching bollocks now. Sorry, Stops, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
No.
All right, last 30 seconds.
No point to this. When you die on following these false idols, your life would have been meaningless. So asking me about my strength, I don't think you needed much strength. It's just pointless to do anything else other than implement the Deen of Islam in everything.
If you had a chance to speak to all the non-Muslims in the world, what would you like to say to them if you have just 1 minute?
I think I would say the same thing I'd want to say to Muslims in the world, which is don't blindly believe what you've been taught by your parents, your culture, your society. Question it for yourself. How do you know what you're following is true? How do you know that all the things that you've been taught are true about everything? And I don't just mean about questions of science or what have you, which of course we ask questions anyway. It's about what you should and shouldn't do. What is your life for? Ask questions about this. How do you know that what you've been taught is true? And if you do know, if you investigate it and you discover the truth, why don't you implement it in all areas of your life? So ask questions and don't blindly follow.
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic that right at the end there, I actually agree with him. I would
Yeah.
say is my exact message to Muslims, because any Muslims who do that in any kind of, careful, critical way is going to leave the religion, because it's just,
Yeah.
it's,
That was my reaction too. I thought, well, why don't you?
yeah, exactly. But it's funny, he's actually giving the very message that he doesn't want to give to Muslims, because if they do start thinking about it, they're going to probably leave. So the fact we've got plenty of ex-Muslims in the chat tonight is kind of showing that. But oh man, we finally made it through. Right, stops.
Wow.
What are your thoughts on this lovely story we've watched tonight?
Well, okay, he's a professional Muslim. Okay, this is his job. This is how he makes his money. I don't think he actually does anything else but this stuff. So, of course, he has to preach to the choir. This is how he garners donations. This is how he gets his money. So he has to tell the people what they want to hear. And of course, Muslims, what they want to hear is they want to have confirmation that what they are believing is the right way, and that they are going to go as far away from hell as possible and into paradise. This is what they want. And now he's telling them, yeah, if you do everything that is in the Quran, if you do everything that what Allah is telling you to do, you're on a good track. And this is exactly what they want to hear, and he's giving them exactly this message. So, yeah, this is for him. It's like a job interview where he is sort of manifesting himself as somebody who is capable of telling the people what they want to hear, so that they want to hear more. And I think that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Actually, I just want to address something. Great show. Maybe you need 2 hours rather than one. Yeah, I mean, we
No.
have tried to keep these shows shorter than that. Partly
Yeah.
because Pops tends to do like 4 hours the night before anyway on his German channel. But
No, yesterday was 3:40.
oh, just 3 hours and 40 minutes. I was wondering though, we do tend to have more viewers watching after a little bit later. Like we start off with hardly anyone, and then we tend to get 10, 12, 14, 15, 17 people or whatever.
It's always like
I was
that.
wondering, are we starting a little bit too early for people? I mean, maybe people can tell me in the chat. I mean, I'm not saying we're going to move it. Obviously, it's down to what we can manage. But I mean, in theory, would people want to start a bit later, maybe half an hour later or an hour later, if that was possible? Sorry, I got here late. Yeah, well, Hassan, this is what I'm asking basically to the audience. Would people prefer if we started a little later? I'm not saying we will do it, but obviously I'm open to listening to what. So let me know in the chat if starting half hour or an hour later would be more preferable for you, because it'd be interesting to know. Maybe I'll do a poll in the community post. Anyway, sorry, stops. Getting back to what you said. Yeah, I mean, well, I was going to ask you actually. What did you think of the veracity of his conversion story? Are you?
Not convinced. No, I think this is fabrication. I think he somehow has conjured up this idea that if he is a troubled kid, a juvenile, rebellious like all juveniles are, and then he suddenly comes to his senses that this somehow touches a nerve, that this is something that appeals to people, I think.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I don't look. I'm not saying that he's definitely lying, okay? But I'm saying in my head, when I was watching that the first time through, I thought the inconsistencies and everything that goes on made me think that the kind of narrative that I laid out seems more plausible to me. Now, I'm not definitely saying he's lying, or maybe he's fudged a few details, but it's overall it's sort of right. But it just sounds, for the reasons that I spelled out, I just I wouldn't lay money on it that this is in any way really accurate of his past. And I just think he was raised in a moderately secular household that wasn't really big on Islam, but it was obviously there as an influence through his father. And probably went to Catholic school just because it was the best school in the area.
Mm.
He got into trouble as a teenager. His dad put him into Islam, and he just went full throttle. As trouble people do, they get really fundamentalist about it. And to me, that just seems like a more reasonable narrative. But the reason that he does make up this story, partly because it makes him look better to rewrite it in that way, but it's also a propaganda tool, isn't it? Because he can repeat all the Dawa talking points that you would hear at Speaker's Corner. He can repeat this as if, like, even as a 10-year-old, I knew this, all these truths about Islam. It just, I was coming to this independently even before I started preaching Dawa. And I just think it's a propaganda tactic. So, this is, and yeah, I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And as I say, I'm not definitely accuse him of it. I'm just saying I'm not persuaded. If I was on a jury, I would say, you're not guilty of no, you're guilty of not telling the truth. That's what I would say. Yeah, but I mean, and in terms of the actual, the apologetics and his reasons for believing Islam, and I researched all the different religions. Again, this is just all Dawa talking points, and it's absolutely terrible. And whenever he talks about having these mind-blowing reasons as to why he joined Islam, we get no detail from it. Absolutely no detail. So, just the usual bullshit. Let's be honest.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking, if I were to be a politician, this is the kind of story that I would come up with. When I was 10, I was living in a democracy, and I could see that there were some benefits. And then when we moved into a more totalitarian state, I realized that democracy is where it's at. So I decided to study all these different forms of government. Then at the age of 14, I decided, okay, this is where I want to be. And so I was influenced by my parents to be. So this is exactly the kind of narrative that you want to build up, so that you have a CV which is sort of seamlessly going into where you are today to make it look as though this is the only sensible way that it should be going. So this is how I see it. I see this as a conjecture.
That's a really good comparison, actually. You spelling it out that way makes it sound even more ridiculous, because if you did hear a politician doing that, you'd say, yeah, that's fucking made up, mate. You're just doing that for the crowd. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so look, I really got much more to say about it, so
No.
I think we should probably end here.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody in the chat. It's been really nice. There's been lots of old faces and new faces. There's been lots of funny comments. It's been really, really good tonight with the chat. So thank you to everyone who's contributed. Spread the word. If you like the channel, let
Thanks
people
for
know. Let's get the subscribers up.
the
And
creativity.
I'll probably do a poll about the timing. As I say, I'm not saying that we are going to change the time, but I will be interested to know if people would prefer us to start a bit later, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, and there was something else I was going to say, and now it's completely slipped my mind. Oh yeah. Oh, actually, two things. Number one, we are hopefully in the next couple of weeks we're going to do a kind of have ex-Muslims on to kind of tell their stories about leaving Islam, just generally have a chat, sort of an open mic session. So if anyone's interested, leave a comment in the last community post on the channel and let me know, and we'll see if we can get you on, because we've already got a couple of people interested. And number two, let me know as well if in the comments to this video if you want me to have a look at any other, if you want us to have a look at any other Dawa conversion stories, because there's a lot of people, Ali Dawa apparently is a convert as well, even though he grew up in a Muslim family too. If anyone's interested in us dissecting anyone else's stories, who's what's his name, Sheikh Uthman, we could have a look. His is really funny, actually. I've already watched it. He tried to like make himself out like he was Scarface or something, called The Godfather, before he joined Islam. So
they tend to do that, don't they? They love this.
But yeah, if anyone's interested in us, and I'm not saying we'll do it next week, but maybe, you know, in a few weeks' time, because I think it's interesting if we build up a few of these dawah stories, you'll see how much bullshit is in them, and then maybe we'll do like a ranking of dawah apologists at some point. That's kind of an idea I have in the back of my head. So if people are interested in that, let me know in the comments of the video. Yeah, don't charm the female ex-Muslims too much drastic. That is not my mission objective. I'm always very professional when I talk to ex-Muslims of either, you know, regardless of their gender. So yeah, I think that's it. Stop spamming. I was gonna say to you any last words, which is what I normally say, but it actually makes it sound like I've got you on death row or something. So I'm gonna say this time, is
No.
there anything you'd like to end with? Okay.
As you can see behind me, after 1.5 hours, the car is charged, so I can get in and go home.
Was that the symbolism of that? That went right over my head. That's brilliant. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. We will see you next Friday at the usual time. Have a great weekend, and you know, avoid Darwa bros because they're very silly people. Good
Take
night.
care. Take it easy. Have a happy week.